Ancient Australian Aboriginals believed that the world around them was connected to a hidden place called Dreamtime. Dreamtime had little to do with sleeping. Among other things, it was the home of spirits who dreamt up reality. And people could visit Dreamtime, experience visions, and come back in a better state of mind. It is ancient mysteries like this one that helped lay the groundwork for modern ideas about virtual reality. But so much has happened in the interim to arrive at the Oculus Rift. The idea of putting on a pair of goggles and visiting an alternate reality took a long time to develop. So, how did we get from ancient myths to head-mounted displays that take us to simulated worlds? Well, it all started with the photograph. It may not seem like much to you now, but our fancy hat-wearing friends, the Victorians, were fascinated with the photograph, and they came up with all kinds of peculiar things to do with it. For instance, the stereoscope used mirrors or lenses to make two identical pictures appear as one. This gave the image an illusion of depth, and you could almost imagine it as a place that you could go inside. It's in the Victorian age where we see the first inklings of the idea that we could inhabit a place of media instead of just looking at it. There was a blurring of the lines between fiction and reality. The fantasy writer and critic Lynn Carter credits the late Victorian novel The Wood Beyond the World as the first imaginary world. According to him, the distinguishing feature of an imaginary world is that you're intended to believe it is real, in the same way that Hogwarts is intended to be thought of as a real place, or how players treat Second Life like it's real despite the centaurs and fox people. Now that society was thinking about virtual places, it was only a matter of time before people started trying to build machines to go there. Virtual reality was given a big boost by three important inventions in the next century. The first was the SENSORAMA, created by a disgruntled cinematographer who wanted to add some excitement to the otherwise sedentary movie experience. It was a booth that you stuck your head into to view a movie shot on 70mm film of things like a motorcycle riding through New York City. It also had realistic smells because New York smells so good. The second was the hologram. Developed a year later, it involved shooting a laser beam through a photographic recording of a light field to make a 3D image. A holographer named Gene Dolgoff became convinced that a hologram made from a really high-intensity wave, such as cosmic rays, could be used to construct physical matter, which must have seemed really crazy to people at the time. But he shared the idea with Gene Roddenberry, who used it as the basis for the holodeck in Star Trek. This introduced a lot of, let's say, computer science-minded young people, I didn't say nerds, to the idea of living inside a virtual simulation. The last was the Sword of Damocles, commonly said to be the first head-mounted display. It was a heavy piece of hardware that hung from a mechanical arm mounted to the ceiling. Its purpose was similar to Google Glass, but could only do simple lines. According to its co-creator Bob Sproul, you could create crummy pictures, but it didn't suspend disbelief. So at this point, we're still a long way off from the beautiful, fluid virtual reality that we know and love today, but we are getting closer. The next big development came when video games got involved. Naturally, this happened at the Atari LA lab in Sunnyvale, California, where a young woman named Brenda Laurel conceptualized a very strange computer called the Interactive Fantasy System. According to research memos, the Interactive Fantasy System was to be a room where the player interacted with a fantasy world via speech recognition, body tracking, eye tracking, gestures, touch displays, and paralinguistics. That's things like gasping and sighing and changing the tone of your voice. Of course, her vision never came to light because the video game market crashed in 1983 and Atari went belly up after flooding the market with ET cartridges and a crappy version of Pac-Man. But three important figures emerged from the ashes of Atari LA Lab. First was Thomas Zimmerman, who created a $9,000 data glove that could track your hand position inside virtual reality. The data glove would later be redesigned into the Power Glove, which was much simpler and pared down, but made you look so bad. Then there's Jaron Lanier, who coined the term virtual reality. And finally is Scott Fisher, who went to NASA and founded their virtual environment workstation. So there were all these talented people working on VR, and everyone was excited. It seemed like VR was on the verge of a big breakthrough. And then the unexpected happened. VR stunk. Technology was not advanced enough to do it. Those virtuality arcade pods were awkward and choppy. SEGA began working on SEGA VR, but it was canceled because it was crappy. The Virtual Boy flopped and ended up on clearance aisles. Also, Lawnmower Man did absolutely nothing to sell VR. The 90s for virtual reality was like that year in high school when you had acne and a mullet and your retainer made you talk funny. And then virtual reality went dormant for a while, but the technology continued to advance. So in 2011, when an 18-year-old named Palmer Luckey hacked together an Oculus Rift in his parents' garage, it worked quite well. The next thing you know, the Rift takes off on Kickstarter. Facebook invests in it. Valve throws their weight behind it. Sony announces PlayStation VR, and everyone is super excited about the possibility of new games to play. Now we're here on the precipice, waiting to see if it will finally be virtual reality's breakout moment. But what kind of experiences will we have in VR anyway? As you've seen, gaming has had a huge role in virtual reality's history, but it's also so much more. VR pulls from film and literature and photography and science fiction and meditation and spirituality and space travel. There's so much to explore in virtual environments, but I'm still pretty stoked for the virtual GTA carjackings. So what do you think? Given all the past attempts at VR, is this finally the moment where the technology hits the mainstream? Or is this just the 90s all over again? More importantly, what virtual worlds in video games are you excited about maybe stepping into? Hash it out in the comments, and if you like what you saw, please subscribe. I'll see you next week.